For more than 2 decades, one name has dominated Russia and really the world stage: Vladimir Putin. But how did a former spy, a man who was basically a bureaucratic unknown, become one of the most powerful and frankly feared leaders on the entire planet? Well, we're about to break down his incredible story, from the shadows of the KGB right to the throne of the Kremlin. So picture this. It's New Year's Eve, 1999. The world's freaking out about the Y2K bug, right? But in Moscow, a political bombshell just drops. The Russian president, Boris Yeltsin, suddenly resigns. And he hands over power to his deputy, a 47-year-old ex-KGB agent that pretty much nobody outside of Russia had ever heard of. The media literally called him the man from nowhere. So who was he? And how on earth did he climb so high, so incredibly fast? To get to the bottom of it, we're going to trace his path through 5 key chapters. We'll start with that idea of the man from nowhere, then see how he was really forged in the old USSR, and then witness his stunning seizure of power. After that, we'll dive into his mission to rebuild a Russian empire. And finally, we'll ask the biggest question of all. Is Putin an anomaly? Or is he just the latest in a very, very long line of Russian autocrats? Okay, first things first. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Because to really understand the man, you absolutely have to understand the system that created him, the Soviet Union. You know, when Putin was born back in 1952, it wasn't into some failing state. Far from it. He was born into a Soviet Union that felt like a superpower on the rise. After World War II, the economy was just booming. We're talking 7% growth year after year. That created this powerful sense of national pride, this feeling that communism was actually winning the Cold War. But here's the thing, that big picture national pride didn't always make it down to street level. Putin grew up in a communal apartment in Leningrad, a city still deeply scarred by the war. And rats, they were a constant problem. That kind of environment, where you literally have to fight for your space, it instills a pretty ruthless lesson early on. Life is a struggle, and the only goal is to come out on top. So, like a lot of kids, he was inspired by these romantic spy shows on TV. He saw the KGB as the ultimate way to serve the state. He joined up in 1975 and became, as he later put it, the ideal product of the Soviet system. But you know, the reality wasn't all glamorous spycraft. It was years and years of desk work before he finally got posted to East Germany, just in time to get a front row seat to watch that very same system begin to completely fall apart. And that crumbling system, well, it set the perfect stage for his next chapter. When Putin came back to Russia in 1990, the country was just in total chaos. And in all that chaos, he found his ladder. Just take a look at this timeline. It's absolutely astonishing. In 1990, he's just some mid-level official back in St. Petersburg. By 96, he's in Moscow, put in charge of the massive redistribution of state property. I mean, talk about a perfect position to build some powerful alliances. From there, it's just boom, boom, boom. Deputy Chief of Staff, then head of the new security agency, the FSB, and finally, Yeltsin's chosen heir. Let that sink in. 7 years. From a nobody bureaucrat to the hand-picked successor for the president of Russia. It wasn't just a rise to power. It was a political lightning strike. So once he got that power, the man from nowhere moved fast to make sure he would never be powerless again. This next phase was all about locking down his control and starting what he saw as his life's work. And his method was systematic. First, he went after the oligarchs, these super wealthy businessmen who had grabbed massive fortunes in the 90s. He brought them to heel, and he made brutal examples of anyone who dared to resist. He would play his own ministers off each other, just to make sure no one could ever challenge him. And for those who became direct opponents, well, the consequences were often fatal. A deeply disturbing pattern of poisonings emerged, sometimes with military-grade nerve agents like Novichok. Then, by 2008, he ran into a problem. The Constitution had a 2-term limit. His solution? A truly masterful political maneuver. He stepped aside, put a loyal ally, Dmitry Medvedev, in the president's chair, and then he just took the job of prime minister so he could keep calling the shots from behind the scenes. And then in 2012, he just ran for president again and took it back. He completely bypassed the spirit of the Constitution without ever technically breaking the law. With his power at home completely locked down, Putin's gaze turned outward. See, he didn't view the collapse of the Soviet Union as a moment of liberation for Russia's neighbors. He saw it as a national humiliation. He looked at countries like Ukraine and Georgia not as their own sovereign nations, but as lost provinces that rightfully belonged under Moscow's thumb. And that imperial worldview, it wasn't just talk. It translated directly into a pattern of escalating military action. First, you have the 2008 war in Georgia. Then, 6 years later, the annexation of Crimea. And finally, of course, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Each step was a calculated, violent move to rebuild Russia's sphere of influence and directly challenge the West.
So, this entire pattern of behavior brings us to a final, and I think a really crucial question. Is Vladimir Putin some kind of historical accident, just a one-off strongman, or is he the product of something much, much deeper in Russia's own history?
To answer that, we need to understand this key concept, autocracy. What does it mean? It's a system of government by one person who has absolute power. That's it. And for centuries, that has been the defining feature of Russian politics. Because when you look back, the pattern is just undeniable. From the absolute rule of the czars and their secret police all the way back in the 16th century, to the totalitarian grip of communist dictators like Joseph Stalin, Russia has this long, deep history of being led by a single, powerful strongman. The flags have changed, the ideologies have changed, but that core culture of autocracy has remained remarkably consistent. So, this leaves us with the ultimate question, the one that really gets to the heart of it all. Is Vladimir Putin simply a symptom of Russia's political culture, a man who just filled a power vacuum that was always going to be there? Or is he the architect of modern Russia, a leader who single-handedly bent the arc of his country's history to his own will? Answering that, well, that's the key to understanding both the man and the world that he continues to shape today.